friends? Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop with another edition of Shop Talk. This is where I cover emails that are sent to me, text messages, etc., where you ask questions and I try to give you my best answer. We've got a ton of them here. This seems to be getting more and more every week. Melissa picks them out and, I have no idea what's in the stack. I truly have not even thumbed through them at all. So I have no idea, but we will weed them down and try to get the most important ones. A quick health update, I guess. My hands are seriously getting worse every single day. I have tried probably more things for arthritis than almost anybody you would know. And mainly that's because of you guys. You have suggested a million different things, and pretty much I've tried almost every one of them. There's been one or two things I didn't try, but it's just because I know they won't work for me because they're just placebo. I'm not a placebo kind of guy. If it don't work, it don't work. Period, black and white. That's it. And unfortunately, so far, the only thing that has helped my pain is meloxicam, and I've tried several things from the doctor. He's currently got me on prednisone. We're very early in that, and I have not felt any real relief from that yet. But the additional diagnosis is, in addition to the arthritis that I have in my hands, which is what seems to be progressing the worst, is in my hands, unfortunately. He said, well, in addition to the arthritis, you really do have advanced carpal tunnel. He gave me three options on that. We're starting with the prednisone because he thinks that'll help the whole arthritis thing and maybe help the hands some. But what I haven't told you is I've been waking up in the middle of the night almost actually several times a night, screaming, just going, ow, I can't, and it's just the pain in my hands, just bad. So I'm wearing the sleeve things at night. Those really bug me. I don't know, I'm really one of those weird sensitive type people that every little thing bothers me, so it's hard to sleep with those on. That's not helping either, so I don't know. It's just very weird. I'm a genetic defect from where they come from. I just want you to know I'm doing everything I can. The truth is I can barely work a full day now. And matter of fact, I didn't work a full day yesterday. I quit about 3 o'clock. I said I just can't do it anymore. My hands were just killing me. But on the positive side, we do have a lot of stuff in the can that I've done. In addition, you've been seeing a lot of Caleb's stuff lately, mostly because most of his stuff is quicker and easier to fix, I guess you'd say, even though they're not all that easy, as you've seen. I mean, he's done some pretty remarkable things, so I'm not taking away. But if you think that's remarkable, wait till you see some of the stuff that's coming up. And unfortunately, just last night, and I know this is going to be out of context from last night, but today is Friday, June 26th. It just happens to be my 44th wedding anniversary. I'm glad I looked at that clock, the calendar there. 44 years. But anyway, yesterday evening, I tried to release one of my videos that was more of a minimal one, but unfortunately it was corrupt, and people saw it and it quit playing in about 20 minutes, and it's just not easy being me. It's hard enough to just get them out and get them up there, and then when they're corrupt, it's like, now you got to do it again, and it's just time consuming as heck. It really is. Melissa does most of that now, so at least that's not so much on me now as it is on her, but now that's got to be redone. Okay, enough talk about that. That kind of brings us up to date. Friends, I want to interrupt the video for just a moment and thank a couple of people for some viewer gifts. And I gotta apologize first thing. These have been sitting here for a couple of months, well, not 2 months, but about a month now, and I kept forgetting to put them into the shop talks, and I apologize. Well, here's some antler, and this is from Mike Bufford, and he's in Lafayette, Louisiana. Some pieces of antler. Now these are from exotic deer. I could tell that pretty much instantly when I saw them. I know they're not really from elk, and I could tell they're not from whitetail, obviously. But anyway, they are from exotic deer. These have had a lot of rodent chewing on them. If you look at all these little marks, that's all rodent gnawing is what that amounts to. When the antlers hit the ground, rodents love to chew on these things. It's got minerals and things in them, so that's why if you don't find them in the first couple of months after they're shed, often you don't find them at all because they're chewed up and gone. So Anyway, you know, squirrels and rats, mice, everything eats them. That's just nature taking care of itself, I guess. But thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it. We'll try to put these to good use. Thank you. The next one's been sitting here for quite a long time, and I just really apologize to you. And this is from Tony Talacco, I believe. Tony, T-O-N-Y, and then T-A-L-A-C-K-O, and he's from St. Union, Washington. Tony sent us a nice donation check. I appreciate that very much. He sent me some very fine CA glue filament for wicking CA glue into places, and a nice letter, and he said thanks for the videos, and very complimentary. Thank you very, very much, Tony. I really do appreciate it. And if you've been wondering why the check hasn't been cashed, it's because I forgot and let it sit on the shelf. I apologize. We'll take care of that now, though. Thank you. And then we've got another nice gift here from John Cook, and he's from Lebanon, Pennsylvania. John sent me some large pieces of ebony. Now this is really nice here. This is huge ebony. Boy, it's very heavy. This stuff is so dense and so heavy. It's so much heavier than normal wood. When you pick it up, you can just tell. I think what I remember reading was a block of ebony 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot is like 70 pounds. And I think concrete's around 100 pounds. So, I mean, to give you some idea, it's pretty darn heavy. So it's almost as dense as concrete or something like that. I may have those numbers wrong, but it's similar to that. There's another piece of ebony, and this one has a hole in it, curiously enough, and I'm not really exactly sure. I almost think that was a knot hole, you know, I almost think that, but then I imagine it was probably drilled. It's not a perfectly round hole. It's oblong, so I don't know what that is, but anyway, it's a hole, and could have been drilled. But John, thank you so much. I'm so sorry I didn't get to that sooner. And that wasn't enough. John also sent this along, and for those of you who don't know what that is, this is a peg shaver for violin pegs. This is a really nice one. I like this one. It has 2 different sizings on it. You can set it for 2 different kinds of pegs. I would assume that would be like for a 3/4 violin or small violins, and then for the standard size violins based on the size of the reaming holes there. I have one of these already. It's kind of adjustable, like you can just go up and down with it, and this one works pretty well too. But you know, I've got Caleb in the shop now, and we can always use an extra tool. So John, thank you so much for this. I really do appreciate it very much. Thank you all for watching my videos. Now back to the show. I'm just going to give you a glimpse at a project that is coming up. Now this will be way down the road, so don't expect it tomorrow or the next day, but it'll be down the road. But you'll get a look at this, and trust me, this is a project. This is worse than building one from scratch, trust me. You'll see it. It's a cool one, it really is. You'll like it when you see it. Okay, we're going to start going through this. As I've already told you, I'm a slow reader, so I'm shutting the camera off right now. I'm going to read and weed through these and pick out the really important ones, and we'll try to cover them as quick as we can because nobody's watching the shop talk videos anyway. Well, we're going to start off with one that's just a comment, and I am going to read comments too because, you know, I think it's a good mix. And this one is from Andrew Keppel, and he's very, very complimentary of the channel and of my approach. He says, I value your content, craftsmanship, and quiet confidence. He says he's trying his hand at mandolin making, and he's stumbled into the Semenoff book now. He's already given a go at an Army-Navy type mandolin. He just thinks it's neat the way I approach a problem, and you know, you try different things. You know, there's not just one way to do everything. There's a million ways to do everything. He likes that, and especially when he's learning to play. In my training, by the way, that I teach, you know, the 4-finger chord is a very complicated chord, but I show you how to get started, you know, and build up to that. So he likes that kind of approach. He says, P.S. Caleb is great. I love his spirit and humility, and he can fix things to boot. So thank you very much, Andrew Keppel. I really do appreciate your nice comments there. Thank you. Okay, this next email is incredibly timely. As you may have seen, I just did one on a massive repair, a video. And it turns out it wasn't a massive repair at all. In fact, there was nothing to repair. It was one of these deals from a music store that just told the guy, you know, false information. And basically that's what we're dealing with here, it sounds like. This is from Rick Nelson, not that Rick Nelson. I think he died in a plane wreck, as a matter of fact, so I don't think it's that Rick Nelson. But anyway, Rick Nelson says, I have a question. He says, I have a 6-string Takamine. I have played it since 2004. It's my everyday player. I took it to, I'm going to leave out the name of the music store, but this is one of the big box music stores. Just for the record, the one that came into my shop that I called a massive repair, that was not from a big box store. Many people thought it was. It was not. It was from a local chain store. And when I say local, I don't mean local to this area. I mean local in the Missouri area. It was quite a ways from here. But anyway, it definitely was a mom and pop type store. Going back to Rick's problem, he took it to the store, and it is a big box store. He has a buzz at his 13th fret on his high E string. And they told him it's unfixable. Well, right there I can tell you, you're wrong. You know, I don't care what you bring it to me, it's fixable. The question is, it's not whether it's fixable or not. Everything is fixable. I mean, seriously, everything is fixable. It just depends on how deep you want to go, you know. Now, I'm not saying it's an easy fix to fix his buzzing at the 13th fret on the high E, but more than likely it is. I mean, typically it's just a file job and a recrowning job. And if it's only on one string, I am positive it's fixable, period. So Rick, they're just full of you know what. And I'm sorry you're running into that, man. I wish I could help you, but unfortunately I'm covered up. So good luck to you. I hope you're able to get it fixed. Thank you so much for watching the videos. Well, this next question is a really good question, and I think it'll benefit a lot of people. It's about quarter sawn wood, and he doesn't really understand what I mean when I say quarter sawn wood. This is from Denmark, and I'm going to butcher your name. I'm very sorry. But Stig, or Stig maybe, S-T-I-G is the first name. Gulbaek, G-U-L-B-A-E-K, from Denmark. Well, Stig, I will try to give you a little demonstration here, and I'll even pick out some wood and show you the difference, and then I think it'll be fairly clear to you, and I'll tell you why it's important. Now, as we get into this discussion on quarter sawn wood, just know that these are my opinions. Feel strongly that quarter sawn wood is the way to go. Not everybody feels that way. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of builders these days who would just argue to their grave that quarter sawn is good in some places and not so good in other places. For instance, I think most people would agree that quarter sawn wood is good on the top, not as much on the back and sides. And I will give them a point on that. I do think that you can make a fine instrument out of wood that is not quarter sawn on the back and sides. I believe you can make a fine instrument. So it's not as important, I will give you that. But I still prefer quarter sawn wood throughout the whole instrument. And I'm going to tell you why and show you how I build them and etc. here quickly with the wood that I have selected. I'm going to start with this piece because I think it's a real good example of quarter sawn. And hopefully the camera will focus. You can see that the grain lines go perpendicular through the flat plane of the wood. So if you look at the flat plane of the wood, the grain lines are very narrow and they go down through. And that is another point of contention. Is it better to have narrow grain lines or better to have wide grain lines? The truth is, the wider grain lines probably do give you a slightly more mellow sound, because that darker grain that you see, that the growth ring type grain, is harder. The more dense it is, the more stiff that top's going to be. But having said that, I still prefer the tighter grain. A number of reasons. It's very stiff, it's stronger over the years, and that's what you're building them for, is for the years. Over the years, that's going to last longer. It's not going to bow and pull up and bend as much. Stradivari violins are very high grade quarter sawn wood, mostly very tight grain wood. I looked at a bunch of original Stradivari violins when I was in Italy, and I went to the museum in Cremona. So, I mean, I'm talking firsthand information. and I saw them with my own eyes. So if it was good enough for Stradivari, it's good enough for this boy right here from the Ozarks. So this is a real good example of quarter sawn wood, and that's just about as perfect a piece as you can find. I hand select all my pieces of wood that I put in my instruments. I physically go buy them. I don't order them online. Now, that's not 100% true. If somebody says, I've got to have curly Honduras mahogany or whatever, well, I may have to order that. You know, I don't always know where to find some things, but if it's just my typical instruments that you've seen me build on my program, then I pretty much hand select every piece of wood. And I go to the hardwood lumber store, pick out the Paduke. I go to the supplier up in Fulton, Missouri. Old Standard Wood is where I get my spruce and my maple, and he is as good as it gets on that stuff. John Griffin is his name. All right, so that's a quarter sawn piece. That was spruce. Now let's go to some maple. You know, it's the same thing in maple, so it's still the grain going this way. Here's a pretty perfectly quarter sawn piece of maple. Let me try to get the camera to focus. You can see it's a little slight angle, but that's kind of typical. Most of the time, you're not going to get them absolutely perfectly square 90. You know, that's good enough in my book. That's a pretty nice piece of wood. I would say if I was preferring, I would prefer on an arch top instrument, if it's not perfectly square quarter sawn, I would prefer it be slightly this way rather than slightly this way. Now, this one does happen to be just slightly in, but it's very minimal, so it's not that big a deal. But I would prefer them to be slightly out because that matches the perpendicular of the curve, if that makes sense to you. That's a good piece of maple right there. Now here's a piece of maple. This is not quarter sawn wood, but this just gives you an example of a difference. Now this one is, you know, sawed on an angle, lumber term for that, and I can't think of it right off the top of my head, but I know it, I've heard it. Here, on the other end of that same board, you can see it's very, what I call slab sawn. So I refer to all of this type of wood that's not quarter sawn as just slab sawn or plain sawn wood. Here's a real good example of just plain sawn or flat sawn wood here. And if it'll focus, there it is. So that's the difference, Stig. And that grain being perpendicular makes it stiffer, makes it stronger. And you know, when you're talking a guitar that's only, that thick, and you got all that string pressure pulling up on that, if you don't think that's important, I think you missed the boat. That's important in my book. And that's why I look for good quarter sawn. When you're buying an instrument, in addition to this information that I've just told you, one of the main ways you can tell whether the wood is really nice quarter sawn wood or not is you look for these, and I believe they're called medullary lines, medullary arrays, and you can see the lines going through the, now some of this is sawmill marks, so you got to be careful what you're looking at. If you look, you can see what I refer to it as kind of like cross-checking. You can see it grown into the wood and it goes across the grain. And that's not grain, it's just the way the tree grows. And if you're looking to buy a real high quality instrument with a really high quality top, then you look for those medullary rays or medullary lines that go across the grain. When you see that, you know you've got a pretty quarter sawn piece of wood. Now, that's assuming that it's not a piece of veneered plywood, because they do that to trick you too. So the way you can tell it's not plywood is you look around the sound hole. If for whatever reason they've painted the sound hole, that edge, then you can probably bet it's plywood because they painted it so you wouldn't know it. But you can look around there and you can usually see the layers of the plywood. Anyway, those are just some helpful tips on picking out quarter sawn wood, and good quality, high quality instruments, in my opinion, are made with high quality quarter sawn wood. Again, I will give those folks that argue the other way that flat sawn wood has a better tone. Earlier, perhaps it has a better tone. But in the long haul, I'll stick with the quarter sawn wood. That's me, and I'm not going to change on that. Hope you enjoyed that, Stig. I hope that helps you. Thank you so much for the question. I think you helped a lot of people. Hey, by the way, while we're talking about wood, let's just, clarify something that I think a lot of people are confused about also. What's the difference between hardwood and softwood? Well, hardwood, sort of as the name implies, is harder typically than softwood. Is it always that way? No. Black and white, no. Like for instance, yellow pine would be considered a softwood, but it's almost as hard as oak, especially after it's been really dried, etc. So there's differences in softwoods and hardwoods in other ways, and that's how you know whether you're dealing with a softwood or a hardwood. Basically, if it keeps its needles and stays green all year, it's pretty much a softwood. If it loses its leaves, a deciduous type tree, then it is a hardwood. And balsa is considered a hardwood, even though it's incredibly soft. You can't just go by the name hard and soft. It's based on the species of tree is how they base the hard and soft. But I can tell you for sure there's huge differences when you're picking out your wood for building instruments. I like the hardwoods. I'm not a huge fan of the softer hardwoods. Now the softer hardwoods for building instruments would be mahogany for one. Now don't get me wrong, don't send me hate mail. There's beautiful sounding mahogany guitars out there. Lots and lots and lots of them, millions of them. But for my ear, I prefer the sound of a rosewood or a padauk or that type sound. I like that ring and that real hard punch type thing. I'm a bluegrasser, so I naturally would. Even in bluegrass, there's a lot of real good mahogany guitars that sound wonderful and play great. So, those D18s are hard to beat, don't get me wrong. So I'm not thumbing them down by any stretch. I just want you to know, we're just being honest here, and my preference is the hardwoods. I like that sound. I think it's the coolest sound there is. So that's what I go with primarily. But the mahogany, just as an example, is a much softer hardwood. I would say it's softer than walnut, and walnut is kind of in the middle on hardwoods. It's not real hard, although you can get really hard pieces of walnut, as an example. But not all hardwoods make good soundboards. Like the back of an instrument has to bounce the sound back out. Sure, it does ring and vibrate to some degree, but a lot of it is the fact that it bounces the sound back out. The sound hole is why you get that clear, crisp sound. That's why I like the rosewood and the padauk, because it just is very hard and it bounces that sound right back out. So you get that real neat blend of that real soft wood on top. It pushes the sound right back out the sound hole. Mahogany does that, of course, but just to a lesser degree. So that's why I like the really hard woods the best. Now, getting back to the point about which ones, you shouldn't use, I personally can't get a tone out of a piece of oak. You hit on a piece of oak and it goes, it's just like dud. It's kind of like stepping on a plum. Nothing happens, it just goes, nothing. It's just nothing. If you tap on a piece of padauk, like I use, you just hear it go tong, and it rings, Same way with the spruce. You tap on it, it goes tong, like that. You can hear it. That has a note to it. That's a quality piece of wood to build an instrument out of. If it doesn't make a note before you make an instrument, it probably isn't going to make much of a note after you make an instrument. Sure, it'll play, it'll make a note, but it'll have more of a metallic sound because that's what you're hearing ring. See, it's not rocket science. There's only two things that vibrate on an instrument. One of them is the metal strings, and the other one is the wood. And the goal is to get the wood to make the sound. And there you go. It's just that simple. It's not rocket science at all. Or as I've heard the AVE say, it's not rocket surgery. Okay, I hope that helps a little bit. The reason I got off on that little tangent was because the walnut, when I brought that up as an example, it's not the best for sound either. It's better than oak. Oak sucks, in my opinion, for sound. So, you can experiment around with hardwoods. Now, I've built a lot of mandolins out of sycamore. Trust me, sycamore has sound. You can tap on sycamore and hear it all the way down the valley. I mean, it's really a good sound wood. It doesn't have to be the traditional maple. It doesn't have to be the traditional rosewood. There's a lot of woods out there, and if you experiment around, you'll hear woods that make a good sound. And if they make a good sound before, then they'll probably make a good sound after if you've done everything correct. I hope that helps you out too. This next question is a good one, and I believe it's going to help a lot of people. It's from John. That's the only name I have. We have a username. It's J@XEC. So if you're J@XEC, this is your question and answer time here. He has a Larrivee Dreadnought guitar. Now, these are his words. He says it is a bit jangly in the upper register. Not enough to actually buzz. If you put the neck under moderate pressure, it'll buzz, he said. He took it to a local tech to put in a new saddle. They raised it about a millimeter, which is about 40 thousandths, would be about 20 thousandths at the 12th fret, which sounds reasonable. Sounds like you have a decent tech there. He says, but the weird thing is it's still jangly. All right, now jangly is one of those black and white terms. Everybody knows what jangly means. Well, you know, it can mean a lot of things. So it can be caused by a number of things, that kind of sound, especially if it's open and you hear it more when it's open than you do when you note it. Now, if you hear it when you note it, it still can be what I'm about to tell you, but it's a lesser degree. A weird sound in your strings when you're hitting an open string, I can tell you it's one of three places. One of three places, period. Well, actually, it's one of four places. I'm adding the fourth one here as a bonus. Okay, it's either in your nut or your saddle. That's number one and number two, black and white. Those are the most common places right there. If it's an open string. Of course, if your strings are really, really low, it could be at any one of your frets. So that would be number three. So it's either your nut, your saddle, or a fret. The fourth thing that can cause a weird sound in an open string is the serving, the winding that's around the string can be loose. It's not very common at all, but I have had some strings over the years, especially from one manufacturer, and I'm not going to name them, where they did have a problem there for a while with their strings windings being loose, and it would make a weird sound on your string. Those are the four places to look. Now, if it's in the upper register and it's the high strings, then obviously it's not the number four item. I've covered this before, I'm sure, but at your nut, and considering the peg head is this way, your nut has to be filed at a perfect exact angle so that the last place that string touches is at the edge of the nut. And so that when the string comes over the fretboard here, that the last place it touched is at the very, very edge, inside edge, if you want to call it that, of the nut. If it touches halfway and comes out, then you're going to get a weird sound inside that nut. And trust me, it happens a lot. And one of the ways you can kind of tell that is really get down with maybe a magnifying glass, whatever. I just happen to have good close vision, so I generally can see it with my naked eyes, except nowadays, as I've gotten older, I have to go to my close-up specs. If you look real good in that nut from about maybe midpoint or somewhere out toward the fretboard, you'll see kind of a black area, and that's from that string vibrating in there. Now, I'm not saying you won't see black the whole way, but I'm just saying if the only place you see that black is from about, say, halfway or 2/3 of the way back, then probably you've got that problem. So that's the way you kind of look at your nut and kind of tell. But just very light dressing on that nut and keep that angle perfect, you know, and make sure the last place it touches is right there on the inside edge of that nut. Same way at the saddle. It has to leave the saddle. It's lesser degree that you'll hear it in the saddle, but you will hear it, especially if you've got a little bit thicker saddle, especially, you can hear it in the saddle. I doubt the Larrivee has a very thick saddle, but you still could hear it in the saddle. It is possible. I've heard it many times. There, the difference is, it's just that that angle of that saddle is, you know, maybe it's just a hair below flat, or, you know, I like a slight angle back on that saddle. That way, that ensures that the last place it touches is on that inside edge. And when you note that, that can still buzz a little bit and make a weird sound. Okay, if it's not that, if it's not either the nut or the saddle and you're still hearing it, then it almost certainly has to be some kind of a fret issue. The last real far outside idea is that it's some sort of a sympathetic vibration in the instrument itself. This is a number 5. This is double bonus points. I have heard this before. It's fairly rare, but I've heard it, I've probably heard it a dozen times in 40 years, so I mean, it's not completely unheard of. And that is that when you hit a specific note on your guitar, something else rings. I call it a sympathetic vibration or sympathetic tone, whatever. And it can be your truss rod, it can be, a tuning key, it can be something on your tail piece. So there you go. That's 5 ideas that you can check. Most likely in your case, it's either a high fret or probably something at the saddle. He goes into great detail on his saddle, and I want to address that too because he does raise some points. He said the tech, when they put the saddle in, the tech saddle is perfectly flat on the bottom and it fits the slot very tight. And he says, there's no movement. You got a good tech, I believe. He says that his saddle is concave. Now, concave on the bottom. Now, concave would be like this on the bottom. So in other words, it's hollow on the bottom. But he says it rocks in there. That doesn't make sense. And he says that he thinks that there's a high spot in the bottom of the saddle slot and it's rocking on that even though it's concave. And he thinks that the original maker cut that concave in there to compensate for that. He said the other one doesn't rock because it's so tight in the slot. All of that could be true. Could be. Doesn't quite sound right to me exactly. I'm not doubting it. It could happen. But I don't think that would cause your jangly sound. I don't think it would. Might not get the clarity of sound. You might not get the punch of sound. You might not get the fullness. But I don't think it'd cause your problem. And I'm going by jangly, meaning that it's a weird kind of sound that you're hearing. And that's what I'm taking jangly to mean. I hope that helps you. So John, good luck to you. I hope you're able to get it fixed. Just to put a footnote on there would be definitely you want your saddle slot flat on the bottom, and definitely you want your saddle flat on the bottom. You want perfect contact there. If it's not flat, then I have myself a little tool that I made a long time ago with a little tiny hook on it. And that's what I made that tool for. Well, I mean, I use it for other things too, but I use that tool for that purpose, to get rid of any high spots. How can you tell if you've got it flat? Well, put something skinny in there, a short piece of fret rockers type steel or something, and put it in there and see if that piece of straight steel is rocking. If it is, keep scratching that until, and little bites, you want to sneak up on it, and then as soon as it quits rocking, well then stop, you're there. Try to make sure that you've got it the full width of your saddle slot too when you do that, because like this tool is very narrow. It's more narrow than the saddle slot, so I would have to go across that hump, back and forth across the hump to get rid of it. Hope that helps you, John. Good luck to you. Good question. I'm going to cut this short. I'm not getting anywhere near through all of these because it's getting long, and I'm going to try to keep these shorter, and unfortunately that means a ton of questions. There could be some really good questions in here. I'm just going to leave them in file and I'll get to them as I get to them. But we do have one more good question here, and I think it'll help a lot of people also. This one is from Clyde. Clyde 1936 is the username. Mike Power, it looks like, is his real name. He was complimentary. He likes to watch the videos and things. And he did ask a question apparently on one of the videos that got by me, I suppose. I try to get back to most people on those, but I've had to slow that down too because I seriously can't keep up anymore. He has an 89 Guild D25 acoustic guitar. And he had poison ivy lotion on his arm, and he was playing it, and it left a white spot on the guitar. Typically, when I see the white marks on instruments, typically it's from the shellac, and it's moisture getting into the shellac. Sometimes they put shellac down first and then put a nitrocellulose over it, and somehow the moisture gets into that shellac layer and turns it white. I'm not saying that's what happened in this case. In this particular case, it could be that the final finish is shellac, and in that case, that is what happened, almost guarantee you. If it's a nitrocellulose lacquer and it turned white, then I'm assuming that it's some sort of a chemical reaction to the lacquer to the lotion. He says it's not real bad, but his guitars are almost pristine and he really, it bugs him. Well, he doesn't really want to send it back to the factory for a refinish, which is what the factory suggested. So I guess, I'm going on a limb here, but I'm going to suggest using the semi-chrome polish on it. Take some elbow grease. It's not a 5-second job. You do have to put it on. I seriously like these little blue shop towels. Now I like the smooth ones. If you look here, this is the smooth one. It doesn't have a texture. Some of them are textured. I don't like the textured ones. But anyway, I just dampen this down, and just when I say damp, I don't want water running out of it. Just dampen it down, put a little bit of that semi-chrome polish maybe on the tip of the rag, and then just rub it in, rub it in, rub it in, rub it in. I'm pretty sure you'll get rid of it if it's not a real bad white mark there. Can't guarantee it, but I would kind of think that'll do it for you. I would maybe test it in a small spot and see if you see anything improving. I hope that helps you. That's the best suggestion I have, I think. The only other suggestion I would have, and it's basically doing the same thing, it's just even more work, and that would be you could take some like 2000 sandpaper, wet or dry, and use it wet. With a little bit of dish soap in the water, just take a small piece, like maybe 1.5 inch square, something like that. And then just get in there and rub it like this. And if you want to use a block, you can use a sanding block. I prefer to do this kind of thing with my fingers. I really do. But you got to keep it moving. You don't want to make a deep spot anywhere. You want to keep it moving. You could go with the 2000 first and then do the semi-chrome polish to buff it back. I hope that helps you, Mike, and good luck to you on that. Mike did make another comment, and that he does love the Renaissance wax, he says, that I push here on the channel. Again, I don't get any kickback from that, by the way. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. It's just what I use, and when I find something I like, I show it to you guys. I have to buy it just like you do. But anyway, he says he used to be a real fan of the Gibson polish, but not anymore, he says. I use the Renaissance wax. So Mike, thank you so much for watching. This is going to conclude Shop Talk today, trying to shorten them down a little bit. I only got through a very few of them, but I do think this was one of the best ones. At least I think it was. I hope you do too. Please tell your friends and tell them how important, even in the comments of other videos, tell them how important it is to watch the Shop Talks. Thank you very much.